They're called the greatest generation, men and women from all walks of life who grew up in the Great Depression, led our nation to victory in World War II, and helped make America a beacon of freedom and democracy for all the world. And do they have some stories to tell? I'm pleased to be partnering with the New York State Military Museum and Veterans Research Center to preserve the words and memories of many of our World War II veterans. These stories will be entered into the state's archives, where they will be accessible to researchers, academics, and future generations. Our veterans have given so much to help build a brighter future for all Americans. This tribute is just one small way of saying thank you.
My husband was Edward Walter Hurley, and he joined the National Guards in September of 1940 because it was not looking too good in the World War II. He wanted to be with friends he knew, so rather than be drafted, he wanted to enlist into the National Guards. And it was Company D, 108th Infantry, 27th Division. And it was September of 1940. And my brother and an uncle was also in there. And at the time, my husband was my boyfriend. We weren't married. And in October of 1940, the National Guards were mustered in, as they called it, and things weren't looking good on the European side. And so October 24th, 73 years ago, last Thursday, my husband left Oswego with the National Guard. They all formed at the State Armory in Oswego, and we were allowed to say goodbye to them. That they had to march out of the armory over First Street to where the Big M Market is today. That was the railroad station, the New York Railroad. And that's where they were boarding the train. So the families, they closed the whole city that day when they left, October 24, 1940. And when my boyfriend came along, we were allowed, couldn't go over to them. We had to stay back. I got up on a car, the hood of a car, and I stood so he could see me. And they left. And it was supposed to be for 1 year of training in Fort McCullough, Alabama. And they went there supposedly for the 1 year, when December 1941, they were supposed to come home in October of 41, and December of 41, Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. So all the National Guards were on standby basis, and President Roosevelt, Franklin D., was in office, and in September of 41, he declared all National Guards had to extend their 1 year to 2.5 years more in the service. to be on guard. And they were down at Fort McClellan, and then in December, Pearl Harbor was bombed. And so that was the duration. My husband was gone 5 years. He never come back till 1945. And he was shipped over to the Pacific side. They went to
Conference room C?
I'm sorry?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Hello.
Just wondering. They told me to come to room, or the conference room C.
All right, we're just in the middle of an interview here. It should be done fairly shortly, so if you'd like to take a seat.
Okay,
Here, I'll,
thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. There's cords.
Oh, I forgot about this.
Yeah.
So they went to Fort McCullough, Alabama, and then from there, after the war broke out, then they were shipped to Fort Ord, California. And they were there for a while. Then they were supposed to go to Guadalcanal. And Guadalcanal was already, well, they were halfway there. And they got word that Guadalcanal was already taken by the Japanese. So they went, they had to reverse and change their course. And they ended up in, see, from, I know he was at Hawaii. They shipped him into Hawaii. And they were there for a while, more training. And then they went to Luzon. He was in the battle in Luzon. He went through quite a bit in 5 years. Yeah. And he come home in October of all that. It was October again. He had jungle rat. That meant all his flesh was coming off his hands because they laid in the swamps fighting the Japanese, and they called it jungle rat. And I didn't see it because they put him in the hospital, and that was in 45. And he was in the hospital a long time. Yeah. But they bathed him, they put him, soaked him, his whole body was the same. And they soaked him in a bathtub full of penicillin. And that's what helped cure the jungle rat. And then they let him come home on furlough when they got the jungle rat all cleared up. And he was home. He had a 2 weeks furlough. And he came down with malaria. The day he come home, really. By the time he got to Oswego, we had to go up to Syracuse and get him. Back in those days, you know, there was no communication, only by telephone or by letter. Many letters were written. And they let him come home, and when he got home, he got malaria, very bad. And he couldn't move. I mean, he was right in bed. The doctor had to come and take care of him. And so his 2 weeks was up. So his mother called in and said he was in no shape to travel, because he wasn't. I went and seen him every day, and he really was in bad shape. And his mother called up, so they gave him a 15-day extension on his furlough. And they said, you'll have to come back by then. He was supposed to go back to the Pacific when he went back. And he wasn't totally up to par when he went back. And I went up to the airport, up to the trains. There was no airplanes them days. Yeah, it was train travel. And I went up to Syracuse to the train station to be with him. And I said to the conductor, I said, he has malaria, very bad. And I said, will you please watch him? And that was hard, because he wasn't well. So they took him, the conductor took him on board, and he said, come on, you can come with me and I'll show you where we'll put him and take care of him, which I thought was nice of the conductor. And he brought me on the train, and I saw they had a place in the back of the train for him, a regular, it was like a bed, and they put him right down in there, and they let me stay till I knew he was comfortable. And then I left the train, and the conductor assured me, and I trusted him, that he had to make one change in New York City from the New York Central to the Penn Station. And the conductor assured me that he would be taken care of. And when they got to New York, they took him off the train onto the Penn Station, and he went. Oh, they had an ambulance, a stretcher waiting at the train to transfer him to the Penn Station train. And I heard this afterward. And so that he made it back to Moore General Hospital that way in North Carolina. And he was 9 months there being treated for the malaria. The jungle rot never returned, thank God. But he had enough to handle. And they gave him all kind of medication. He took a special treatment, 7618 they called it. It was the medicine that came out, and it was supposed to help with malaria, and it didn't. He was one that volunteered to take the new shot for that 7618. And my husband lived to be 73 years old, and he had malaria till the day he died. Nothing helped. And then he was 5 years gone. I waited for it. Well, yep. The 15-day extension. Of course, we had been going together since we were young kids. I was only 15, he was 17. But when they gave him the 15-day extension, him and I made up our minds we were meant for each other, because I had waited for him. And we got married. And it was all he could do to make the wedding, but he did it. He did it. And I seen that we got married this Saturday, and we were going to the Syracuse Hotel for honeymoon, and we went to the hotel, and we got into our room, and the malaria hit him like that again. So I knew what I had to do. So I got him down in bed, so I knew I could trust he was there. And I went out and I bought a paring knife, a dozen of oranges, and I went in a store and bought a juice squeezer. So I had the paring knife to cut the oranges, and I could squeeze the oranges. The orange juice is what helped a lot. And that's how I spent my honeymoon. But it was worth it because we were together. That was the main thing. And then the following Saturday after that, he had to go back. That was, so that's my story for on the personal side of Company D. They were a wonderful group. They were all together. My brother came out of it okay, and my uncle, they came out of it all right too. But the war ended before my husband got discharged out of the hospital. So he didn't have to go, well, he went back to be discharged, but that was it. Yeah.